All right. Hello and welcome back to the Futurism at JHU podcast. I'm your host, Nicholas, and today joined with speaker Antonella. Antonella is a JHU alum, CEO and president of a health tech company, and would love if you could just introduce who you are, Antonella.
Hi, everyone. I'm Antonella Sturniolo. I did my master's degree at Hopkins in the public health school, and I focused on reproductive health and health policy and health leadership and management. And yes, I am the CEO and president of Upsilon Healthcare Technology, and we are developing a new intrauterine device product.
So I'm curious. You said Upsilon. It sounds Greek to me. Is it like epsilon?
Yeah.
Like
so
Upsilon?
Yeah, exactly. That's a good catch.
Okay.
So my grandfather was an OBGYN from Brazil, and he had invented one of the first intrauterine devices back in the 1960s. This was around the same time as the copper device came out, and a lot of IUDs actually came to market around that time. And his device was called the Upsilon. So I am working to recreate his device because it was really successful and really effective. And it was used globally, but then he passed away in 1982. So it started off more as a passion, get to know my roots project a little bit. And then it transformed from there. But yeah, it switched from Upsilon to Upsilon. Also for legal purposes, but yeah.
Makes sense. So I guess before we dive into your company, I'd love to hear about your time at Hopkins. How was it doing the master's program at the public health school?
Yeah, so I graduated from the MPH program this past year, so May of 2022.
Oh, recent.
Very recent, and it was really awesome. I had a great time. It was 1 year, so really fast paced, but they really have you delve into whatever your interests are, which I think is really powerful, and it lets you explore, different than the standard undergrad. You have to take liberal arts approach where you have to take everything, even if you may not be interested in it. I really appreciated, which was fine. I went to a liberal arts school as well, but I really enjoyed the difference of being able to really fully immerse yourself in, why you're going to that program in the first place, and just meeting everyone in your class. And it felt like a really communal year for me.
So yeah. Is Upsilon something that you decided to do before doing the MPH, or was it something that happened after? Is it something that you knew you wanted to get into, or is it something that kind of just happened after the program?
So I started researching my grandfather and IUDs and the IUD market about 6 years ago now. And I went to Penn as an undergrad, and while I was there, so it started off as research, and then I got connected to a few people. I have a medical engineer who is amazing, and we're like, I think we can do something with this. So it started off beforehand, and then it navigated me towards doing the MPH at Hopkins, and I'm really glad it did. And it expanded from there too. And now I'm trying to get Hopkins students to help me too. We had internship programs during COVID, and with undergrads and grad students, and I know the MPHers need to do practicum. So I'm like, yes, more really smart kids and students. I want them working with me. So yeah.
So I guess diving into the technology, you said it's a new type of IUD.
Yeah.
Not sure how much you're able to talk about it, but what is kind of the tech?
We're protected, so I can talk a little bit, but okay. Yeah. So I'll start with the US market. So we have, on the US market, there are 5 current IUDs. And yeah, just to explain, so an IUD is an intrauterine device that's meant to be used as a contraceptive to prevent pregnancy. And so in the US, there are 5 on the market. 4 of them are hormonal. So they have different hormones that prevent pregnancy. And the 5th one is a copper IUD, which they all release their mode of action a little bit at a time over the course of like 3 to 7 years, depending on which device it is. And the interesting thing about the ones on the US market is that they're all classified under the drug branch of the FDA. So even the copper, which is considered a non-hormonal IUD, is still regulated by the FDA as a drug. So this one, the Upsilon, doesn't have an active component to it. There's no copper and there's no hormones. So it's a really niche market that we're focusing on. But also the more I got into it, the more I realized there aren't really other options apart from, you know, a hormonal and a copper IUD, because they have very similar effects on the body, those 2 different categories. And then apart from that, you know, you're stuck with the pill or like other forms of contraceptives that can really affect your body, and not everybody wants that. Some people do, and you know, that's completely fine. It works wonderfully for some people, but there are a lot of people that started coming up to me when I started doing this research and being like, please let me know, you know, when your clinical studies are, I can't use this for XYZ reason, or this makes me feel this way. I have dysmenorrhea, which is irregular bleeding, or pain, or things like that. Doctors have asked, you know, to help change insertion and removal mechanisms. So I started tapping into that a little bit. Like I mentioned, the Upsilon was used globally, all over the world, and also like really well-respected hospitals in New York and Israel, Brazil, Thailand, all over. So I forgot what the beginning of your question was. But yeah, so it is different. I think that's where we're going with this.
Okay.
Yeah, and we changed also the designs. So basically we came up with like 12 new designs based on the historical device. And obviously we're in the 21st century now. So the technology needs to change from how it was. So we basically made it better and more effective. So it's a foreign body reaction, which means that when you put anything that's not part of your natural body into your body, you're creating this inflammatory response. And yeah, so it's a blockage mechanism. So basically, most of the IUDs are shaped as a T, and this one is shaped as a Y. So it actually fits the uterine cavity a lot more naturally than the other devices.
That's interesting. So like why have they historically been T's and not Y's then? If the Y is more naturally, or like makes more sense
Yeah.
in terms of like the shape there.
So the IUD history is really complicated. So right after my grandfather passed away in the early 80s, all except I think maybe 1 or 2 were pulled from the US market. There was an IUD called the Dalkin Shield, and it sort of looked spider-like. It had a lot of arms, and they were having issues with, I think actually the person who invented the Dalkin went to Hopkins.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, so it was perforating, you know, women and creating a lot of health problems. So of course he was like, well, if mine's coming off the market, they should all, you know, we should all red flag all of the IUDs. So it was just bad timing between my grandfather passing away, this market crash, and people being really scared. A lot of the IUDs are only coming back now in the 2000s. So there's a lot of fear around bringing back old technology that's now newer, even though it could be really beneficial for a lot of women and people worldwide.
So I'm kind of curious, like, was the original IUD like a purely physical kind of device, or like was it kind of a hormone releasing device originally? Like, I'm kind of curious.
It was
like
also just
development.
an inert. Yeah, it was
Oh,
also
okay.
just an inert
Okay.
device. And my grandfather made it in different sizes, depending on how many children you've had. So nulliparous, meaning no children, and multiparous, meaning one or more children. And yeah, but still the same mode of action is the same.
So was his one, was it a T shape or was it like
Y?
It was actually a Y.
So he named it the
interesting.
Upsilon because of the Y shape.
Okay, it makes sense now. It makes it all, it all makes sense. So I'm curious about the hormone releasing ones. Like, how does that work? Like, how is it able to? Yeah, I guess I'm just like curious, like how that works. Like, is there some kind of like mechanical action going on, or like is it just kind of like diffusing?
So you put it in the uterus. And it's a good question. I'm not an expert on hormonal devices because my focus is on non-hormonal mechanisms of contraceptives, but I don't know how it measures when to release, because it's not like an electronic or there's no battery, it's nothing like that. It's
that's what
purely
I was
based on like your hormonal levels. So you put it in the uterus and it releases usually like progestin, and that thickens your uterine walls, and that prevents you from getting pregnant, basically. So yeah, and that's similar to the copper. It's just releasing a little bit, and it's the response of your body is doing very similar thing, just copper versus progestin or levodostrol, other hormones.
So the copper one is also triggering that, like, or no, it's like triggering the strengthening of the like uterine wall.
Yeah, thickening
to prevent. Interesting.
Right, exactly.
Wow. So is progestin like a precursor to progesterone? Is that or is it like its own? Okay. So basically you're releasing progestin, which I'm guessing is it more like stable than progesterone? Is that why you use that? Or that's why it's used instead of pure progesterone?
Progesterone is the hormone that it comes from a woman's ovaries. And so it works in reproduction and like a menstrual cycle. And basically, this is like, can get super scientific, but like you have like FSH and LH hormones, like luteinizing hormones, and it works with your brain. And so everything's like being regulated by your brain, as things usually are. But yeah, so that hormone originates in the ovaries. And yeah, can have a whole session on this type of stuff too. But yeah, so they use that also. You don't want to put a hormone that's not actually naturally coming from your body. In this case, yeah.
Got it. So like, I guess getting into the whole development, R&D, running a company, how has all of that been? Like, has it been a rewarding experience, a nerve-wracking experience, both?
Oh, definitely both. Yeah, so I started while I was at Penn. And I started looking into just the impact of unintended pregnancies globally and in the US. And basically how, nearly half of all pregnancies worldwide are unintended. And in the US specifically, unintended pregnancies impact our economy, usually on average, like $21 billion a year. So it's a lot of impact. And so I started to tap into how do we mitigate that and change that a little bit. And also, the things I was saying before with hearing other people's stories. So yeah, it was pretty simple to start, but once you realize how much there is to do, especially in a medical device aspect, you have regulatory, you have to talk to the FDA, you have to get all these patents, and nothing is cheap to do in the US. So yeah, it's definitely a mixture of rewarding, but also, I could do this all day and night and still have things to do.
So what does a day in the life look for you right now? Is it kind of like your own schedule, or is it like you've kind of created a schedule for yourself?
Yeah, so I was working also while I was studying at Hopkins. But that was sort of nice because I liked how I could integrate my passion and my company into my studies. So everything sort of flowed together in a really natural way. Now I'm in New York now, but full-time I'm in Mexico City. I'm helping an NGO called DKT International with programming down there. They are based in DC, but they help countries all over the world in need of reproductive health services. So we're trying to see if there's some synergies between my work and what they do. I'm trying to help them with, I'm directing their programs and their family planning things down in Mexico and Central America. And so it's a little bit of a mixture. I'm always doing a million things, but yeah, I work, Upsilon's always on my mind. I like to connect with people who, I'm like, oh, maybe, you'd be interested in this. And especially working in women's health and reproductive health and in general, you just meet a lot of people who want to learn more about upcoming contraceptive technologies and ways to mitigate a lot of the pain points that are on the market right now or in the market. So I even work, on the weekends. It sort of doesn't stop because I'm just also really passionate about it. But yeah, it's a mixture of schedule. There's no set schedule. So yeah, I guess I do pick my own schedule.
Got it. And have you kind of delegated kind of the workload? Like, do you have a team? Well, I'm assuming you have a team working with you. But how does that work? Do you kind of delegate and distribute kind of, you're doing operations, you're doing how divided is the work for you?
It's pretty integrative. I sort of have that oversight, because also a lot of my background is in this field. But I would say, yeah, it's really, bouncing ideas off of each other and working together. I think that's the most effective way of doing things, so that there's no accidental overlap or gaps that are being created in the different processes. So yeah, I am not the biggest, I'm I do a lot of research, but I'm not the biggest fan of spending all day on a spreadsheet, sort of. But I've done market projections. I've done the obviously the research. I've done helping create the potential designs of the device. But yeah, so I've done a wide range. But I'm not a business analyst or anything like that. It's like sort of kind of the things where it's like you learn how to do it, you can do it, but your passion doesn't lie there. It's like that. But yeah, all across the board, everybody's sort of mingling in different aspects.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that because I'm studying neuroscience as like my main interest, but I'm also doing like more like entrepreneurship and economics related minors just to like get that experience. Like
Yeah,
the current class I'm taking right now, it's called managerial finance. It's all about like you said, like projections and like financial analysis and being able to like come up with like growth strategies for companies. So that's been pretty
useful
interesting.
skills.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like, more practical, not that neuroscience isn't practical in its own way, but like more marketable skills that can be used, if I want to go into entrepreneurship or business, or just like being able to understand how the economy works and how business works. So that's been pretty valuable for me to like not just get a pure science background, but like you said, like actually being there, like what you've learned is probably more than any class could ever teach, and it's probably the most valuable experience. I was also curious, like what is kind of the long-term goal for you? Like, is this something that you're looking to just kind of do in like North America, or is it something like you want your technology to be all over the world?
Yeah, so we filed for a PCT, so basically an international patent placeholder. My goal, or my dream, I would say, is to really focus on people who need effective, affordable, and like fewer barriers to access methods of contraception. So because, for example, this one doesn't have any like active component to it, my hope is it could be left in the body longer than what's currently on the global market. And that could help, with costs. It could help with access and the ability to reach medical professionals or clinics. And so, yeah, the US market is really tricky, I think, in general across a lot of disciplines, but it's really tricky to infiltrate. But and a lot of the main companies, I think, don't want competition. So I'm also thinking just in terms of impact, where this would be the best fit. And that's why I'm like really happy to be in Mexico right now and seeing the differences in needs clinically and emotionally. And yeah, I think long term, I'm really in it for the impact, and that's something that drove me to continue to do this, even though it's fundraising and financing and pitching to people all the time is not the most fun part of it, but you have to do it if you want to make that impact.
So for any listeners out there who are like interested in public health or like entrepreneurship, do you have any like advice for, I don't know, maybe someone out there is like passionate about this as well, and maybe they want to pursue a career in public health, or creating a startup or business? Do you like have any advice for them in terms of, I don't know, being able to be successful in pursuing that kind of goal?
Well, for Hopkins students, I would say definitely tap into your what's like accessible and offered on campus. I wish I knew more about, Hopkins Tech Ventures before I graduated. And I probably would have utilized those resources a lot more. But yeah, I would say that it's important, if you have a passion, not to just let it die because people think you're too young or not experienced enough. You'll get the experience and you'll learn a lot by being shut down or, challenged with your ideas. So I would say, yeah, continue for sure, no matter what the discipline. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but at least you tried and can say that you tried. Yeah, I could probably give a million things of advice, but that's a good basic overview. And if people listen from not from Hopkins, there's so many outlets, especially on university campuses, that they just want to support for the most part. So support their students and also tap into your social networks. So you never know other students' backgrounds and their experiences and their interests. So you can find a team right there to work on a project.
Cool. Well, I think that's a cool note to wrap up this episode. I appreciate you coming on, taking the time out of your busy day to talk with me. Lots of cool advice for all the budding entrepreneurs and public health people who are interested in public health. So yeah, I really appreciate it. I wish you all the best with Upsilon. Sounds like a really, really cool company, really cool technology. So I really hope you're able to get it out there. But yeah, so this has been speaker episode with Antonella, and we'll see you on the next one.